Donald, I'm so excited to welcome you on this podcast because you were working in IT, right? You were working in IT before you started working as the recruiter. So I'm super excited to learn from your experience, and I'm sure that also listeners to this podcast will also appreciate your insights and hands-on insights, especially from the transition. You were a developer, so what was it like? What was your motivation after all these years working as an IT professional? Why have you transitioned to being a recruiter?
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for having me on the podcast. I'm very excited as well. As a current podcast producer myself, I understand and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. So, diving into my experience, I started out actually as a kid. I was a video gamer back in the mid '80s, and I love technology ever since then. And at that time, I had bugged my mother to death about getting a computer only because it had better graphics. It had the I don't know if people remember Pac-Man, Defender, all those games. It had
Uh,
those games that are similar. They look like the real arcade games. And I bugged her to death about getting a computer, and she told me she would get me one, but I would have to learn how to code a language. So back then it was basic. So I learned basic. I bought a couple of books on my own for actually it was graphic before we even know what graphic design is. Back then they had that for basic. So I bought a book and played around with the software and stuff like that. And then after that I kind of waned off of it. Went to college and majored in computer science. That didn't work out, so I changed majors to economics. But then I had left the computer alone for about 10 years, maybe almost 20. And then in the early 2010s, around 2011, one of my good friends had suggested us building a website that was self-help based. And so we came to a crossroad whether we were going to hire a developer or try to build it ourselves. So I took the chance on and learning because since the internet was created, I had not touched the computer at all outside of Word documents and things like that and spreadsheets. So what I did was I taught myself all the web languages, your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I taught myself PHP and MySQL and built the website. So with that being mine, after a few years of promoting the website, I thought to myself, well, if I want to be taken serious, because I love this kind of occupation, this kind of activity, so let me try to do something to make myself look more legitimate as a developer. So I took a boot camp in 2016, and it was great. So the boot camp, I learned a lot, learned out more officially about the languages and which ones, I was going to be the ones I've enhanced the learning hour, the languages I already knew. And then I decided to try to go forth and transition in the career. I spent 20 years in local government here, 15 of those years as a budget analyst. I'm in Detroit, Michigan in the USA. So as a budget analyst, I used some of those skills and I did a little bit of web development because we have documents we will push to the web. So I was responsible for doing that kind of stuff. But I just really have this burning need to go into technology. And so when I took the boot camp, they had it set up to where you talk to recruiters and things like that. And so when I graduated the boot camp and tried to find a job, I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find out why either. I don't know if it was because I was an older student or because I didn't have enough experience. It probably was a combination of several things. But the problem was I spent 7 months trying to find a job. And
mm,
then I ended up locating a occupation with a guy I know who runs a nonprofit teaching kids. So I was teaching kids how to build app simulations. So that got me into another realm. And guys, I also teach coding to kids and adults. And so, but the transition was a little difficult because I think a lot of my experience was hard to find a job because of the recruiters I was working with. I think I found out I was working with recruiters who may not been as tech knowledgeable as um, would have hoped to and would have liked to have. But funny story with that, after I started teaching, I met my partner David Baird, and he had a company he was building an app with rather, and he decided to transition into recruiting because he had experience with recruiting. And after looking at looking at his outlet and his plan on what he wanted to do, I decided to join him. in working with BairdTech, which is the company on my hat. So in BairdTech, we help startups, and we help startups overall with mainly with headhunting, but we do startup consulting. We help with pitch decks, we help with financial projections, and we also give consulting advice. So once I started learning how to recruit, I took my experience with recruiters and try to make a different approach. And so what we do, we have a whole system where we reach out to people and talk to them and really work hands on with both our clients, which are startups, and the candidates for the jobs. And because of my experience, I try to approach my recruiting techniques on what I wish I would have had when I was looking for a job. So I go out my way. Sometimes I give people advice on their resumes, try to help them out in boosting their resumes or make them more interesting, talk to them about the job market, talk to them about how to approach interviews and things like that. And so Dave and I, we really work hand in hand with our startup clients as well. We help them with their job descriptions. We try to make sure that they're asking exactly what they want, because the clearer you are in a job, the better off candidate you're going to get, and it's more of a win-win for both the candidate and the client. So that's all being said, that's how I made these several transitions. And right now, we're poised for growth, and I'm hoping that we grow very quickly, very soon.
Awesome. Well, it's quite inspiring to see the transition from the IT through the teaching up until recruiting. So yeah. You mentioned you didn't have very good experience with recruiters, which could also be the reason, or partially the reason, why you were not able to land the dream job. So what was the experience like? What were some of the mistakes that you saw the recruiters make?
Well, to be fair, I had I had one recruiter really in my corner. He was really talking me up to people and things like that. The hardest thing about recruiting overall, whether you have a good or bad experience, is all up to the employer. So you can have a great recruiter, you can have a great interview experience, but the problem is it's up to the decision of the company. So if they determine maybe you're not the right fit, maybe there's something about you they don't like, or maybe there's something uncomfortable. It could be something as small as a quick sentence you may have said to turn people off. You just don't know. But I think the experience I had with recruiters, I had one recruiter who really was not, I don't think they were tech savvy at all. The problem with a lot of recruitment companies, the larger ones, is that they just throw a big net out to these companies for people. Like, they'll get 100 people to interview for one job, but that doesn't mean that the 100 people are probably, I would say 30 of them are probably the most qualified. So you got 70 people where you're wasting the employer's time. Mm-hmm. So I think that what happens is, I don't know the relationships between these recruiters and their companies. They may be just clients in the wheelhouse, or they may be personal connections. I don't know. But I think what's missing is the relationship building between both the clients and the recruiters, because you have to understand what your client needs and wants. And when you go the extra mile, that helps you get a better candidate to take and put in front of them. Because a lot of companies, you have hiring managers, recruiters, in-house companies, as well as the C-suite, the CEOs and CTOs who are in the company. They don't have time to pour through 100 resumes. They have to run the company. So as they're running the company, they know what they want. And sometimes you have to bring it out of them, because they might not know how to express exactly what they want. And so I think a lot of recruiters are missing the mark when they don't go that deeper extra mile and go that deeper dive, because once you do, it benefits you and your client. And I think that's a lot of recruiters make that mistake. But yeah, my experience with recruiters, they were great people. Personally, I mean, I had great conversations, and I enjoyed probably 95% of my interviews. I enjoyed having those interviews because I met people. For me, it was an opportunity to network and meet people in the industry, whether it be the company folks or the recruiters. But I just think that a lot of them are missing the mark in terms of going that deeper extra mile.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So that experience also helped you shape your recruiting practice, I guess. So yes. What are the things that you are trying to do differently after all these kind of negative experiences?
I think that, first of all, like I said earlier, I think, I'll tell you this much. I've been saying this for probably over the last 6 months. I think up to now, after the pandemic has died down a little bit, I think that we have a reset society-wise. And I think that in this area, I think it's about building relationships. I call it we're in the relationship economy now. That's what I call it. And what I mean by that is most jobs are unposted. Most jobs go filled without even posted. Sometimes you have to post it for legal reasons. Here we have the U.S. Department of Labor, and you should be posted because you have to make it available to the public. But what's not being told is that a lot of people already have in mind who they're going to hire. Is somebody they know. It could be relative or could be friends of friends. You just don't know, but they know them personally to some extent. And I think that I tell a lot of candidates, in fact, I just had a virtual job fair yesterday, and I was telling some people, you really should get out here and network and meet people and talk to people and build that rapport through a relationship. Because in that building of a relationship, there's establishment of trust as well. And people want to hire and work with people they trust. It's just simple as that. Now, it's a lot of work because you got to get out here and you got to talk yourself up. Nobody's going to talk for you better than yourself. So it takes a lot of work. And I've done, since the website was built, we launched that website in around 2014. And I'll tell you, Michael, for the 10 years of that, I spent all my 10 years networking to the point I love networking. I love meeting people, and I've gotten good at it, I think, because of the fact that I do it quite often. And I would tell candidates that they need to do that, and recruiters should as well. I think recruiters should there's so many different avenues in the tech world. There's startup meetups, there's happy hours after work, there's, different talks, different workshops. I think the recruiters and candidates should frequent all of those because then you meet people and you get to know a flavor of the person. And for example, with our stuff, what we do is that we go deeper with both the candidate and the client. Because what we're trying to do is match make, and we're trying to make a win-win for both sides. And we don't always hit the mark because of other things we cannot control, but we have a better success rate, I think, than the average recruiter because of the fact that we go extra. And like I said, we go the extra mile to get people to really tell their story better than just beyond the resume. Like, for example, we have our own system where we call it an applicant tracking system, but it's actually a matchmaking service almost, because we have a person's profile on our system, and then we do a pre-screen ahead of time with the person to determine if they're right fit for the role. And in those pre-screens, we have preset questions that tailor toward what the needs of the employer are, and then we shoot that off to the employer to let them know we talked to this person. We're able to talk up the person, highlight their skills and their experience, and then let the employer decide whether they want to go further with the interview process with the person or not. And most times they do. And I think that's our success rate be more than most. And matter of fact, Michael, I'll tell you, with our client base, we're a small outfit. We have just over 30 clients. I think about maybe 75% of them have gone through referral. We don't really advertise our service either because we've gotten most of our clients from referral. So now that we're building on and branching out and getting more growth, we're going to start doing more things this year, next year, probably be more aggressive in letting our presence be known.
Awesome. I mean, it's just great to see that you are also pre-screening candidates and highlighting some of the interesting aspects of their experience. And this also helps you stand out, right? Because a lot of the other recruiters, they just forward CVs and that's it. Yep. So that's very cool. And you said that you have about 30 clients right now, and you are looking to grow it further. So what would you suggest to other recruiters who may be just starting their practice and they have one client, for example? Like how they can get to a level where they have 30 clients like you, and how long does it even take to get up to a list of 30 clients that give you a business on a recurring pace?
Well, to give you an insight, we started off in 2018. For 2018 and 2019, we really were growing at a rapid rate. We had probably about in a year, we probably got about 5 clients. But then the pandemic happened in 2020 and everything slowed down. I mean, everything. So once we came out of that into 2021, we started rebuilding our connections with folks. And so being said, for people who are first-time recruiters or just starting out, what I would suggest, again, like I said earlier, you got to get out, you got to network, you got to meet people, go to meetups. Startups are always looking. The startup area would be good because sometimes with more established companies, it's harder to penetrate getting a business with them because They already have the in-house recruiters. They already have their hiring managers. They have all those things set. But the startup market is a very good area because you're helping a company grow. And if you do it right, you can end up being a partner with that company and being a very big contributor to their growth. And I would say for first time recruiters, starting recruiters, I would say you got to establish a relationship with clients. And don't be afraid to tell them what you can offer. And I think once you show them that you can go the extra mile like we do, then you'll get a better client base, and you'll probably most likely get a referral system for yourself. They'll tell their friends who may be other founders or maybe other CEOs or whatever. They'll recommend you. And if that's the case too, if you want to be aggressive with it, don't be afraid to ask for referrals. Say, hey, who else do you know needs help with hiring? Who else do you know that needs recruiter? Just don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Awesome. Oh, that's inspiring. And you also mentioned that you got these clients through referrals, so inbound traffic. Now, I'm also kind of wondering, what do you plan to, or what are you doing now, to stand out in the crowd, kind of, right? Because these managers are also being approached by all the other agencies or individual recruiters, contractors who are offering recruiting service, and it's quite difficult to stand out, right? So what do you propose them? Like, what do you say? Hey, we are different because what? Like, how do you get their attention?
Well, the data, to me, I love data. Information is the biggest piece, and I think us coming out of, we're still formally a startup. I think we're getting out of that. We'll probably be getting out of the startup status pretty soon. But the biggest thing, you got to, talk up your numbers, talk up your results, make sure you document your results. Because we can give you, like I was giving you the stats earlier about our success rate. Our success rate is probably around 75, 80% with our placement. So the thing is about that, you have to talk that up. If you can establish a track record and then talk up your track record, because that's your bread and butter in terms of getting new clients. You got to differentiate yourself and find out ways to do that. Research is also good. Research on other recruitment companies and other recruiting areas is also good, so you can learn how to describe the way you're different. Describe your differentiation, because that's going to get somebody triggered to listen to you and say, okay, so they can do this. I haven't come across with that. Another idea is to talk to a company representative and find out what their experience with recruiters is like. And then if they're generous enough to give you that information, then immediately hone on the points that makes you different. Because in that way, you'll be able to say, look, those guys don't do that. We can. I mean, it's all about sales. You got to sell yourself, whether it's be a recruiter or a candidate. So, that's my advice for that, because we do that as well. Sometimes we don't hit the mark. A lot of times in the startup world by itself is massive. And it's very interesting because there's a lot of companies that are in certain stages. And most of our, if not all of our clients are in the growth stage anyway. We've got clients who have Series A rounds, Series B rounds, pre-seed rounds. So they're growing, and they're growing at a rapid rate. And they're doing some cool things. We talk to them based on what they do and what their product and services are, because it's interesting. Tech is interesting to me personally anyway. And so by learning what they do, we have a varied amount of services our different clients provide. Like, for example, we have a client who has built medical devices, help people with their breathing. We've had people who, like one company we have in the San Francisco area, they build robots that are able to automate food preparation and cooking, like pizzas and French fries and fast food and things like that. We have another client now that's building a software as a service for behavioral health professionals, helping them deal with their clients with behavioral health. So we just have a gamut of different people that are doing really wonderful things. And I think by doing that too, once you build a roster of clients, you can talk about that. There's so many different things that you can bring to the table if you have the right approach, and if you keep your eyes on the prize and keep track of your data. That's the biggest thing I would say, because once you talk up what you do, people, when it comes to building relationships, people go on what they feel about you. They feel that you're confident. They feel that you know what you're doing. they're most likely to do business with you. And if they don't, the other thing about the startup world too, which is cool, is the fact that they might not be able to do it right then and there in the initial talk, but they may come back to you 6 months down the line, or 9 months, or 12 months down the line. Hey, I might need your help with helping recruit some people. We're in a position to hire some folks. And we've had a lot of that too. So, we've been just very fortunate based on the service we provide. And I think that if you try to do your best in your service, that helps and goes a long way too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting. Also, obviously, the relationships help, as you say, so that people remember you. And you mentioned something interesting about all these startups, right? Very exciting companies. They build some robotics or software as a service or whatnot. But I also can imagine they use different technical stack. So some of them may use Python or PHP or C Sharp, or for some other you may need to hire or find data scientists. So do you specialize in certain technologies, or is this something on your radar, or have you on the other side just kind of ignored the different technologies and you just take whatever comes your way?
Yeah, we don't discriminate with any technology because what we're trying to do is be in what they call industry agnostic. So our platform, we're planning on launching a full service platform for recruiting, and then that would be where you can post jobs, apply for jobs on our platform. But what we're looking at across industries, because other clients we've had are like clients we've had, they have other roles, like they'll ask for like a sales representative, a manager. We've placed that. Non-tech roles like scrum masters and things like that. So our service is really across any industry. Anybody looking for people to hire. It's not necessarily tech bound, but because we started in tech, that's been the majority of where we honed our chops and where we provided and improved our service on. But yeah, we're built for any industry, but we just have to branch that out once we get our platform launched.
Awesome. And do you also have some other recruiters on your team?
Actually, it's just us and one other person. So Dave and I have done most of the work ourselves over these last 6 years. So, really, it's just a matter, we just been grinding, man, just keep going. And so we also have a database of candidates. So, and the reason why we built that is that we want to have our own client, own candidate list in-house. So that right now we have over 1,100 clients. Of candidates we've built. So when our clients are looking for people, we can go right to our own network. And that's what we're building, is a network of both employers and candidates. So then again, it turns out to be like a matchmaking service already in the house, already built. Most places like Monster.com, Indeed, they'll have you on file, but it's more like a free-for-all for everybody. But what we're doing is building relationships as well. So we got relationships with our candidates, we got relationships with our employer clients, and I think that just makes it for a better success model for us.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting that you keep mentioning the relationships, because it's really important. And years ago, staffing agencies were mentioning the big numbers, like 300,000 or 500,000 candidates in the database, and we were looking at like, wow, that's so cool. But now on the other side, it's probably better to have just 1,000 candidates on the list, but to have some meaningful relationship with them. So how do you actually engage with these people? How do you keep the relationship up? Like, do you follow up with them? Do you send some newsletters? Do you invite them for coffee? Like, how do you keep those people engaged so they don't forget about you?
Well, to give you an insight on just the 1,100 people, we got people all over the country. So we can't we can't have coffee with everybody, maybe on a Zoom call. But what we do have is a framework where, like, I talk to people. Just the talking and having conversation makes a difference. I always tell people, if you need anything, if you want any advice, let me know. So we keep ourselves open to a lot. I think there's going to be a time very soon we won't be able to keep up with every single person, but we do offer ourselves to people because people ask me advice all the time. For example, the job fair, I was opening up, I had probably about 30 people reach out to me. And so I made sure I responded to every single person, because that kind of stuff, it's the small things that really help determine your success. If you get back with people, if you at least just chime in and talk to people, occasionally, and open yourself up to be open up for advice and things like that. That goes a long way as well. And like you said, for example, if a recruitment outfit has 100,000 or 200,000 candidates in the pipeline, it's going to be impossible to keep up with all these folks. So us being smaller helps us do that better. But I think that even if you do that as in a large company, you got to section it off. You got to have a recruiter maybe have 50 people in their pipeline. Another recruiter may have 100 people in their pipeline, and stress to them, stay in touch with your clients, stay in touch with your candidates. And I think what happens is I have people reach out to me all the time. Any updates on anything? Unfortunately, because we have such a small group of employees, we don't have everything for everybody. But when it goes back to the actual specifications, it just depends on what the employer is looking for. Like you said earlier, some employers are really heavy on React. Some employers are heavy on Python. Some are on like maybe a little bit of PHP, but mostly SQL and MongoDB and things like that. And what helps for me is that being a developer and understanding the different languages and frameworks, it's a better shot for communication and a better chance of success because of that. I've even had conversations with people over the phone, candidates wise, in terms of languages they know. And one guy knew PHP, so he and I talked about that because we both familiar with it. So, those are the smaller things that you really can't describe, but once you get into the practice of, it helps you increase your rate of success. Because I think the problem too with both candidates and recruiters is that you need to really hone in on your skills and focus on your strengths and promote your strengths. Because if you know something, then maybe if you share it with somebody else, you never know how it may help them, in the future. So be open to people and be willing to share, because then that helps them. And if you find a common ground with the person, whether they're going through looking for a job or they're trying to find somebody for their job, then that helps you in terms of your success rate with them as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, it's just so interesting to see how you think about developing the agency and developing the relationship. So, what would you say is the next thing for you? You mentioned you would like to scale the outbound sales, but like, where do you see the agency? You have been working on the agency for a few years. So, if you kind of extrapolate the growth, well, like, what do you think is possible in the next few years?
I think because we're a 360-degree outfit all around, we also have private clients where we help them build an app to minimum viable product status, and we're a partner on a couple of apps. Like one app we've been working on for several years now. It should be launching this year. Another app we're working on should be launching this year as well. So by doing app development and web development plus the headhunting helps us with a way more breadth of service we can provide. And I think both ends are going to grow. And I said earlier, we're working on building a full version of our platform. And once we do that and release that, I think that'll help our growth tremendously. We may even get to the 300, 400,000 candidate level because it'll be all automated. People can go in and upload their profile and things like that. And employers will be able to join it. So I think that's going to help our growth once we get the platform done. But currently, for the short term, our goal this year is to focus on more private clients that we have as far as the employers, and just build that service and keep building it until it's too big we can't manage it ourselves. Then we'll have to think about staff growing and things like that. But for right now, we're rebounding and doing pretty well with it. And I think that I would be bold enough to say that most of our clients are pleased with our service. A lot of them keep coming back. But then the needs of the market change every year, every 6 months. Yeah. So what happens is, like, clients we've had since the beginning, they're still our clients, but they don't need us for any service, or they may want to go another route for recruiting temporarily. So we just keep it moving, man. We stay flexible, and when we work on, because we work on so many different things, we don't stress about not getting a client here or this client not responding. I mean, we may look at that for the short term as far as analyzing it, but we keep moving and keep working on other things we're trying to develop, and that helps us with our growth as well.
Very cool, awesome. Well, so before we wrap it up, what would you suggest as a kind of last piece of advice to recruiters who are where you were 3, 4, 5 years ago when you were starting the agency, you were getting your first clients? What would be your of best advice or final advice, or at least the advice that pops in your mind right now?
I would say, well, first of all, I would say try to enjoy what you're doing. If it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a task, then maybe you should be doing something else. I think that recruiting as an industry is really very people based. So if you like people, you will be very successful. But it's just a matter of finding your own style of how to approach people. And I think that starting out, you got to build relationships. I can't stress that enough about building relationships. Meet people, and when you do, I think that what you'll find is because there's so many people out here doing interesting things, maybe you might even want to try a tactic of talk to people who what you like personally what they're doing. If you like what they're doing, try to get them as a client, because once you believe in them, they'll believe in you. So again, that goes back to the relationship. It's back and forth. It's a give and take. So that's part of the process of building a relationship, is the trust factor. And if you like what they're doing and you're willing to help them, then offer up what you're willing to do for them. Say, hey, let me help you find somebody. Some people they'll what they'll do is they'll find them a candidate and won't charge them anything for the first one, and then maybe later on they have a formal agreement for compensation. But there's so many different things you can do, but you got to start somewhere. And I say this too, above all else, trust yourself, because if you don't believe in you, nobody else will either. It's an energy thing, because when you know what you're doing and you love what you're doing and you know what you're talking about, people feed on that. I get people asking me for advice all the time because I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and because I have a tech background. I know some things. I may not know everything, but I know more than meets the eye. So it just helps with our growth, and whatever I do to help our growth, that's what I do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's just so energizing to see you being so passionate about recruiting, and I'm so glad you mentioned the importance of building the relationship, because these days so many people are sending mass emails or mass messages and not building the relationship. So it's a great reminder that we all should go out there, including myself, and build those relationships.
Now, one thing I'll say too, Michael, don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to go to everything all at once and burn yourself out. Just take it as a pace that's more comfortable for you. And to piggyback on what you were saying, because I really enjoy technology, period. And I think because as a kid we introduced to things and having a love for it, it helps me even as and I'm in my mid-50s now. So 40 something years later, I've got that passion still, because I like to create. Because the other things I've done, I've produced a local podcast here myself, so I know how to, like what you're doing. I've learned how to do that. I also do other creative measures like film and video and sound and music and things like that. So I keep myself active in various areas of tech. But tech for me is just a passion overall. And so now that I think I'm crafting a career that I'm enjoying what I'm doing, then that helps me become more passionate in interviews like this and other things when I talk to people. So yeah, I really appreciate you noting that. Thank you.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, it's been such a pleasure to having you on the podcast. I'm so thankful for all the insights that you shared with the audience. And before we wrap it up, where can people connect with you and find a bit more about you?
Sure. You can actually reach out to me via LinkedIn. My name is Donald T. Robinson II. I'm in Detroit. And then my email is DON at BairdTech. That's BAIRD.TECH. I'm on Facebook, but I don't really frequent it like I used to. I need to get back on there. But LinkedIn, and then there's another newly formed platform. I'm on Entre, ENTRE. There's a lot of resources for tech folks, no matter what area you're in tech. It's a great outfit to join. But yeah, those are my three main ones, and I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So if you just shoot me a message and a connection request, I'll respond. And yeah, so we'll take it from there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks again. And I hope to see you soon again.
All right. Great talking with you, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you.